Alright, hello guys, this is Calvin with Leads to Closings, and in this video I'm going to be going over what is wholesaling and how does it work. And I was able to fortunately fit that entire title on my whiteboard. So what is wholesaling? Wholesaling is a popular investment strategy whereby an investor gets a property under contract with a seller and then assigns it or wholesales it to a local cash buyer. Basically, it's working with distressed properties, right? It's finding a seller with motivation who has some kind of pressing need whereby they need to sell the property quickly and for cash. The difference between a fix and flip and wholesaling is that with wholesaling, the investor never really owns the property. The only exception is if they were to do a simultaneous or same-day closing, whereby they buy the property and then sell it to an investor on the same day. Typically, the wholesaler will own it, but it's only going to be for a short period of time, right? One hour or something. It's one day they'll own it. So the key takeaways here is that wholesaling is a business strategy that allows investors to make quick profits in the real estate market, right? It involves finding discounted properties, putting them under contract, and then assigning them to another investor at a higher price or double closing them. Wholesaling is different from traditional real estate investing because it doesn't require the wholesaler to actually own the property, right? They're essentially just selling the contract that they have to another investor. So what is wholesaling? Right, wholesaling is a strategy that a lot of investors use, real estate investors use, to make money quickly, typically within 30 days or less, without having to invest large sums of capital. It involves finding a property that is undervalued, that is priced below market value, that has potential to be sold for a higher price by assigning their contract with the seller to an end buyer for a fee. Wholesaling, it's a great way to get started because, as I mentioned, you don't need a lot of capital to get started. You also don't need a ton of knowledge, right? You can go out there, you can take a course like my course, closingsmastery.com. You can learn how to talk to sellers, you can learn how to write offers, and you can very quickly go out and get a contract to buy a property on a property in your market, right? On a house, for example, in your market. Then you can go and sell that contract to an end buyer and make a profit because that end buyer is still able to buy the property below market value, where that buyer will be able to go in, fix it up, rehab the house, renovate it, and then sell it for a higher price, typically to someone who's going to live in it. So there's two types of contracts that are used. The two main contracts are, the first is an assignment of contract, right? So when you're selling your property to your buyer, you can sell it as a contract assignment. That is the most common method. That's the most common type of real estate wholesaling, right? Is where a investor, a wholesaler, gets a property under contract and then assigns that contract to a buyer for a fee. Then the buyer will pay that wholesaler a fee typically at the closing. When they buy it, they will pay the wholesaler what's known as an assignment fee. They're basically paying the wholesaler for the right to take over that contract with the seller. But the wholesaler never actually has to close on it in order to sell it. The other contract, the other methodology is a double closing, and I have a video on my channel about transactional funding, which I recommend you watch. A double closing or a simultaneous closing is when the investor actually does close on the property, but then turns around and immediately resells it to an investor for a fee. So there's an A to B closing and then a B to C closing, which is why it's known as a double closing, because it's two closings at once. As I mentioned, I have a video about transactional funding because the key to a double closing is that you have to have the funds to actually close on the A to B transaction. You are actually buying it from the seller and closing on it, and you need the funds to do that. And if you don't have the funds, or even if you do, I recommend use transactional funding, because then there's less risk to you, and for a nominal fee, it could be 1% of the purchase price or less, you can use someone else's funds to close on it. So you really don't even need any funds to close on it at all. But the key to wholesaling is being able to find properties that are below market value, right, at a substantial discount, and negotiating well with the seller. So how does it work? How does wholesaling work? Well, I mentioned this already. I've explained that it's going out to find a motivated seller in your marketplace and making an offer to that seller. And when the seller accepts your offer, at first verbally, but then you get them to put it in writing by having them sign a purchase contract with you. And then you take that contract and you can market the property for sale, even if you don't have a real estate license, because you are marketing what's known as an equitable interest. You have an interest in the property that you are marketing, and your buyer will pay you a fee known as the assignment fee for taking over your contract. So kind of a quick overview of the process of wholesaling, right, is first you find a property, right? You look for a property in your market that is below market value and has the potential for profit for your investor, right? And you can check out Leads to Closings. We've got all the motivated sellers you need right on there. Now, once you pick up that lead from us, you buy the lead, now you call that seller, you contact them, and you negotiate with them, right? You get them down in price to a price that makes sense, where you think you can resell the property to an investor for, $5, $10, $15, $20,000 more than what you're buying it for, and still have it make sense for that buyer. Once you have the contract signed, you can get pictures taken, you market it to your buyers. I have a whole nother video about finding cash buyers on my channel. You can watch that. But once you find a buyer, now you negotiate the purchase price, their purchase price, with you, because now they're buying the contract from you. So you negotiate with them, and then they sign an assignment of contract with you. They have to see your original purchase contract with the seller plus the assignment of contract. So the key players, the wholesaler is the key player, right? If you are wholesaling, it is your job to be going out and finding properties. That is your main role. You could almost look at yourself as the marketing arm, like the marketing department for these rehabbers, for these cash buyers. They don't have time to be going through and sifting and sorting through hundreds of leads, right? Or, dozens of leads to find the few good ones that are gonna be deals for them. They're out busy, working on their rehab projects. So finding properties, negotiating with sellers, being really good at getting them to accept a price that makes sense for us to buy it, and then marketing that property really well, having really good pictures taken, having a website, knowing how to market the property, and then knowing how to assign it to your cash buyers, which I also talk about in the video about finding cash buyers. Is you have to know how to write an assignment of contract, send it to your buyers, be able to explain it, understand what it means, the terms, the price, and then have them sign that assignment. So what are some of the advantages of wholesaling? Well, it can be a rewarding and very profitable career, right? I mean, you can work part-time, you can work full-time. This could be a side hustle. I've read an article recently on, I think it's Business Insider, which I'm going to make a video about, where a woman this lady worked for over 20 years. And when she realized she didn't have enough money to retire, and she started wholesaling. Her son actually suggested, I think she moved to her son's town, and she started wholesaling, and within just a few months of wholesaling, she was able to put more money into her IRA or 401k, I think it was her Roth IRA, than she had in 20 years working at her job. So there is a potential to make fast profits, and there's also, so that's the first advantage. You can, make good profits very quickly. There's also low capital requirements, right? As I mentioned, you don't even need funds to close on the property. You can use transactional funding. So you don't need a lot of money to get started. You don't need a fancy website and business cards and all that stuff, billboards. You don't need a physical location. You just, really, you could get started, just pick up my Closings Mastery course, go through that, start buying leads from leads to closings, and you will literally have everything you need to put your first deal together. The only thing you wouldn't have are the cash buyers, but you can find them. Watch my video about finding cash buyers. So high profit potential, low risk, low capital requirement, and as far as minimal risk. I mean, you think about with a rehab house, you may have to deal with foundation issues or putting on a new roof, and if you're a buy and hold landlord, you have to deal with tenants. So that's very risky, right? There's a lot of risk with that, but with wholesaling, the only risk is you're risking some of your time and money. If a deal doesn't go through, you most likely, as long as you're doing what you say you're going to do, you're not going to get sued. You communicate well with the buyer and seller. Again, I'm not an attorney. This isn't legal advice, but it's very rare for a wholesaler to get sued, especially if they're doing what they say they're going to do and fulfilling their contractual obligations with the buyer and seller. Okay, and then limited knowledge required. I mean, you think about some careers, you have to go to medical school for years, law school for years. You can get started, just take a few courses online. You can learn how to negotiate with sellers, take my courses, take other people's courses, and you don't need a whole lot of knowledge. And it can be very profitable, right? You can make $5,000, $10,000, $15,000. We have closed deals that have made us over $250,000, $250,000 just on one house. And obviously not every deal is that big, but $250,000 on one transaction. So it can be very profitable as if you know what you're doing and you do it well. So wholesaling is an excellent strategy, especially if you're new, you don't have a lot of experience, you don't have a lot of knowledge, you want to go out there, you want to start making money quickly. You can go on leadstoclosings.com, you can pick up some motivated seller leads, you can get on the phone, you can find sellers other ways too. There's driving for dollars or door knocking. So it can be very profitable and you can get started very quickly with little risk and little knowledge. Some of the disadvantages, there are some legal risks, right? Like if you don't understand the contracts you're using, then you're putting yourself at risk legally. I mean, if you're defaulting on a contract or, you try to sell the property to one buyer, then you get another offer, you sell it to another buyer. It's important to understand the contracts and also understand the laws and regulations within your own area, within your city and state. Some states have laws about wholesaling that you have to be a licensed you have to have a real estate license to wholesale. For example, Illinois, not to go too deep into that subject, but there are some states that have requirements. You have to understand the laws in your state and make sure that you're following them, you're adhering to them. The other disadvantage might be that you have limited control. You don't have a lot of time to sell the property. If you have a 10-day inspection period or a 7-day inspection period, you basically have 1 week to sell that property. So that's why having a cash buyers list is really important, so you can sell your properties quickly. But you do have limited time and sort of limited options as far as what you can do with it. The only thing you can do is sell it to a cash buyer. And so another disadvantage is that it can be hard to find deals, right? Especially if you're new. There's a lot of laws around telemarketing and texting, cold texting. And so if you don't really know about how to set up all those campaigns, or if you even should, or setting up direct mail, which can be expensive, you can pick up leads from leads to closings and get on the phone with sellers very quickly. The only other disadvantage, which I wouldn't say it's so much a disadvantage, but it's just something to be aware of, is about your reputation. And we have been very proactive. Our wholesaling company has an A+ rating with the Better Business Bureau. We have we've received all 5 stars, all 5-star reviews, and that's over 10 years, over a 10-year time period. And the reason is because we do right by people, and if there is ever anybody who ever expresses any kind of, discontentment, like, if someone says, I feel misled, or I don't understand this or that, we immediately pick up the phone and address the issue. And while we have 100% success rate in getting people to just write positive reviews and basically not write negative reviews. So it's just important to keep in mind, you want to do what you say you're going to do. You want to hold yourself accountable, understand the contracts you're signing. They are legally binding documents. You want to make sure that you are, adhering to the terms of the agreement, and you're not misleading people, or, like I said, trying to sell your deal to 2-3 buyers or something like that. Someone that could damage your reputation. But overall, real estate can be very profitable, but it's important. You got to understand the risks, the advantages, the disadvantages, but do your research, follow the laws, right? Maintain your reputation in your field. You can have a lot of success, right? You can network with people, meet interesting people, and another advantage, just throw this in there at the end of this video, is controlling your time. Right? Once you get to the point where you can close 1, 2, 3, 4 deals a month or even more, and you're making enough money, if you want to take off for a weekend or a week, or, spend the day with your kids, you're able to do that. So controlling your time, they don't tax time. So you want to take a day off and, spend time with your kids, or go play golf, or go on a boat, or go skiing, or whatever. You can, and you got your cell phone right there. If something comes up, they can always call you. But controlling your time is a huge advantage, and a lot of people, they're in jobs that they hate, and that's just not a good way to go through life, right? Life is short, it's sweet, but we're only here for a brief moment, and we have to enjoy it. So once you commit to the business, you commit to your success, you build it up, and then you can enjoy life. Or you're making enough money, you control your time. It's a beautiful thing. So that's a quick overview of wholesaling. How does it work? Thank you for watching this video. Check out leadstoclosings.com. It's free to create an account. You can browse leads in your marketplace. There's no contract, there's no long-term commitment, and you can find motivated sellers, pick up some leads, start making calls. Check out closingsmastery.com. That'll teach you everything you need to know to get your first or next contract signed. And make sure to like this video, subscribe to our channel, and I will see you on the next one.